Welcome to Mid-Century Living, your weekly nostalgia podcast about the best of technology and culture from the mid-20th century.
Welcome back to Mid-Century Living, the show where we talk all about the best of the mid-20th century and how to add the vintage vibes to your modern life. We're your hosts, Gonzalo.
And Jackie, thank you for joining us today. So today we're continuing our Mad Men series watch-along with episode 3 of season 1.
Yeah, we're going back to Manhattan today. We're going to jump straight into the scene by scene. If you want to hear more about the show itself, like about its beginnings and inspirations, or who the actors behind these parts are, we started this series with episode 69, Mad Men season 1, episode 1, which also has some information and history about the show itself. So go listen to that. Then go listen to the other scene by scenes, and then listen to this.
Yes, so we will link the first episode in the show notes. But today we are talking about episode 3 of season 1, titled Marriage of Figaro, and it first aired on August 2nd, 2007.
Yes, but before we start, Marriage of Figaro is actually the name of a highly popular opera and sequel to The Barber of Seville, which is the one where the Figaro song happens. So in Marriage of Figaro, we see Figaro and Susanna married and navigating the complexities of the relationship and marriage. So spoiler, they make it through their marriage because it's a third part of the trilogy, which is called The Guilty Mother, which happens 20 years later. And Figaro and Susanna are still married. So is this episode about Don and Betty facing marital issues, or will they make it through? Who's to know?
Who's to know?
I mean, people are to know because this show is 20 years old.
Some of us know, but you don't.
I don't. So, anyway, I'm just basing that off the title.
No, I'm sure Matt Weiner did that on purpose. He doesn't do anything without thinking about it first.
Yeah.
He's one of those directors where, like, people weren't allowed to ad-lib and, like, no, you have to stick to the script and all that stuff. He's one of those guys. But anyway.
One of those.
So, we open with Dawn on a train looking at a Volkswagen ad.
Yes, and this is actually the lemon period ad from Volkswagen, which is the ad that changed the perspective of this car company to the American life. It's weird not only because it has a one-word headline, which is weird, but also has a full stop, which is something that is very weird. And it kind of draws attention to the self-deprecating humor because a lemon is usually the word used for when a car is defective. So why is this impactful? Well, the U.S. had just been at war with Germany a decade ago. Mm-hmm. The Volkswagen, which stands for the people's car, was a Nazi-made car. People were in love with Detroit and their big cars and are facing this huge economic boom, which is making buying these giant cars easy. So why bother with a tiny little foreign car that has a history of being, quote, the enemy's car, right? The full stop also makes you focus on the title for a second longer. The ad is in black and white, which is in contrast with like the magazine's full color. One conscious thing, though, is the Volkswagen logo is actually not centered, which makes it look pleasing. It's actually to the side a little bit, which kind of supplements this like self-deprecating humor because it's like, well, they can't get anything done, right?
Well, while Don is distracted, and rightly so, by this very good ad, a man walks up and recognizes him, but he calls him Dick Whitman, or Richard Whitman, when he recognizes him. So this man's name is Larry Krasinski, and he apparently remembers Don from the Army, from Fort Sill. Apparently this was a U.S. Army post north of Lawton, Oklahoma, and it's one of the 4 locations for the Army Basic Combat Training, and has played a significant role in every major American conflict since 1869.
So does that mean that he was in the Army? Because we don't know.
Well,
a Purple Heart.
We knew he had a Purple Heart in a box in episode 1.
I know, but we don't know what branches of the
yeah, or that it was even his. Like, we just sort of assumed it was his. It could have been somebody else's Purple Heart, but yeah, or like his dad's or something. Like, you don't know anything. We don't know anything, and now we know even less. So, so Don puts a cigarette down, and they talk Army stuff. Larry gives him his card and says that they need to catch up, but Don doesn't want to talk about his past. And when he leaves, Don looks concerned. You say you think he looks like he's trying to remember something.
Yeah, concerned is a better word.
Yeah, I think his face is concerned. Why did he call him Dick Whitman? Intrigued.
Yeah, do I really remember this guy? Do I not? That's the inner monologue of Don.
Maybe. Or maybe it's something else. But anyway, now we're in scene 2. Pete is back from his honeymoon. Sharp transition to the outside of the office building. everyone looking very mid-century, and the scene starts with Ken, Kinsey, and Harry greeting Pete in the elevator.
Yeah, Kinsey's wearing this great trench coat with a hat and a bow tie, and I'm here for it.
They're trying to get juicy honeymoon details out of Pete, but Pete won't talk about his wife that way. He says, I don't know, something happened in the ceremony. The guys keep trying to make sex jokes, but maybe Pete has changed?
Yeah, no. Because the next thing he does is opens his mouth and talks about how his wife was just, quote, laying there talking all about things I'll do, but we never did.
It transitions from the elevator to walking through the office. A secretary welcomes him back in a kind of flirty way, and Harry says, it's the ring, it's like catnip. Is that true? I don't know. But we actually get that a couple times in this episode. Women kind of like looking at men as objects too sometimes. It balances it out a little bit. So a lot of people are hovering outside Pete's office and not looking at all suspicious.
I did not catch that at all.
And then Pete opens his office door and there's a group of Chinese people with chickens. Like, it's like full of chickens and just people like in full traditional garb eating rice, and they just like yell at him to close the door when he opens his office door. And Pete turns around and he's like, okay, who put the Chinaman in my office? And everyone
I was so
bursts into
confused.
laughter.
I was like, was this a joke? Is this a prank? Like,
Yes, and it's like, what kind of wacky, like...
I don't know, because like the extent of office pranks that I've been privy to has been like covering your like coworker's computer in foil.
Right.
Or one time we replaced the like keyboard and mouse and stuff with like cardboard versions of them because they had been out from pregnancy leave or maternity leave. I think that's the word.
But yeah, so this is like way more extreme. But he's reacting to it as though all they did was like put aluminum foil on his computer.
Yeah,
like...
it's so weird.
Another thing I love about this episode is that I feel like the show really gets into its tone. There's a lot of really funny jokes in this episode and in the series as a whole. Like, it's finally working out its like kinks from the pilot, and it's like getting into an actual rhythm, which is like more... This is more like the tone of the show, where like things are serious, but there's also just like actual jokes and really funny scenes, and it balances everything out. It's not all drama all the time.
Yeah. But now we get into the next scene, which is not really a transition as much as it shows the office as Don is arriving and Peggy's helping him take his trench coat off. And Peggy goes, they paid an Oriental family to be Mr. Campbell's office. And Don says, someone will finally be working in there.
Don's on fire this episode. He gets like 3 good jokes. I think I wrote them all down. But anyway, my main takeaway from this scene is Peggy is wearing a really great dress. She actually wears it in at least 2 episodes. Another thing I love about the costume designer is that people who make less money in the show, you see them repeat outfits like you would in real life.
Oh, that's nice.
So Peggy wears this dress a couple times, but it's one of my favorites of hers. It's this blue and black checked dress with a dropped waist and a fabric belt and white cuffs. And she doesn't get a lot of really great outfits in this show, so when she wears something cute, it stands out. And I really love this dress.
Peggy announces that the creative is here for the meeting. Inside Don's office, we have Kinsey, Harry, and Sal, and they're supposed to be brainstorming a meeting about sick or laxatives, but they don't have much. There's a couple of funny puns about how Don is super excited to talk about constipation. Obviously, he's been sarcastic as he lights up another cigarette. And
Kinsey says this one, I think.
Yeah. Kinsey says, what can I say? I'm blocked whenever Don
or Sal says that. Does Sal say it?
No.
No, I thought it was Kinsey.
I think it was Kinsey.
Yeah.
But Sal is very much not gay at all.
Yeah.
In this episode.
Yeah.
It's the way he's sitting, the way he like delivers.
And
I can see now what you said in episode 1, that like the showrunners are like trying to make him be gay, but without saying it for fear of like offending people.
It's just, I think what he represents all of the closeted people back then. Like, it made sense statistically speaking that there would be gay people in every office that just were not out.
True.
So with the high volume of people in this office, it makes sense that there would be at least one gay person, and so he's the gay person, and he's not talking about it. Maybe he doesn't even know it, really, and then, like, no one else knows it because they think they've never met a homosexual in their life, probably, so, like, and it's just important, like, statistically, to, like, include that dynamic, because that would have happened in every office back then.
Yeah. Well, they change topics and talk about the Volkswagen Lemon ad, and they also discuss Volkswagen's previous ad campaign, which is called Think Small, which was just as impactful as Lemon. These two ad campaigns cemented Volkswagen as the car to get. They also talk about Elvis having just returned from West Germany, because remember, at this point in history, there are two Germanys.
Mm-hmm.
The West, which is capitalist and controlled by the US, Britain, and France, and then the East, which is communist and controlled by the Soviet Union. Because yay, history, I had to bring something history to the episode.
Yes. And then Roger bursts in and says, I want the Chinaman out of the building by lunch. And then Don says, but I'm still waiting on my shirts.
Yeah, I don't get that.
Because they run the dry cleaners.
Oh.
It's another joke about how, like, they're the only ones working in this office.
Ah.
But anyway, Don gets 2 zingers in, like, 2 scenes. I thought that was...
Yeah.
He's been all serious all the time. Roger gets a lot of great run-liners in the series also. It's something to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, sharp cut back outside the office to Peggy typing away on her IBM and looking all smiley at Pete, who's just trying to get into the meeting.
Yeah, you see the camera from behind Peggy, and it kind of shows a view of what the office bullpen would be. So, like, where all the secretaries work. And all the desks are the same. There's a working desk with a black rotary phone, and then to the side is the IBM typewriter. And all these desks have these really great office desk lamps, which just scream mid-century. They're kind of hard to explain, and I don't know the model number. And believe me, I tried researching all combinations of office and lamp and mid-century. But they're like these like gray metal Art Deco style lamps made from pressed steel. They look really cool.
They are really cool. So Pete's making some sort of office squabble about the meeting and wanting to be in it, but like just kind of uses it sort of as a transition to bringing up what needs to be brought up. And he just tries to make excuses about their night together and make sure that she's not going to be a problem, I guess. He's so condescending, and I hate him, and Peggy looks heartbroken.
Yeah, and then he does this weird like shrug thing. Like Peggy says it didn't happen, like trying to assure him that like I'll keep your secret. And he does his like little shoulder shrug, like saying like, of course it didn't happen. Like that's the way things are. I can be unfaithful up until the wedding night, even if it's the day before. Like that's what it feels like he's doing with his little like shrug. He's like his face is like, oops. Like
yeah, exactly.
I know no one can see me doing this shrug right now because I'm doing it in front of a camera that no one can see except for you.
Yeah.
But
no, that's exactly it. Like he's just like, this is how it's done. You're not going to be weird about it, right? And then poor Peggy, who's been just like pining after him the whole time he's been on his honeymoon, he finally comes back and she's so excited, and like she's playing along pretty well actually, I think, in this conversation. But poor thing, like you can see it in her face.
Yeah.
But also I hate him, so. Back to the meeting. They're still talking about the Volkswagen ad. No one has any ideas about Secor laxatives, and then they leave.
And as the camera pulls back, it's always at that low angle in the office, right? It's a height of Don's desk, and we see a stack of airmail envelopes on his desk, and they're really cool. And these are those red, white, and blue border envelopes, which became common in the late 19th and early 20th centuries because we needed faster ways to get mail places. And they're designed specifically to be lightweight and aerodynamic, allowing them to be easily transported by air. Today, you can use them for like a touch of elegance and sophistication, or to ensure efficient and secure delivery. But they invoke like a sense of nostalgia and tradition. And then Don drops his cufflink. And it's like a discussion about men and jewelry, and Pete looking forward to getting home tonight, which is like, are you just saying what you think people want to hear from you now that you're married?
I don't know. I think he seems, at the beginning of this episode at least, like genuinely happy. That like he seems like really excited to be married, I think, at the beginning. And he even tries to use being suddenly married as an excuse to bond with Don a little and like invite him to dinner. But Don clearly does not want to hang out with him, and I don't blame him because Pete sucks. I don't want to hang out with him either. So yeah, another hard cut to Peggy and Joan walking in the hallway, and entering the break room, Joan is smoking a cigarette. They're discussing a dirty book that they've been sharing back and forth between them called Lady Chatterley's Lover. You actually Googled it.
Yeah, it's a controversial novel by D.H. Lawrence and follows Constance Chatterley, a woman trapped in a loveless marriage who finds passion and fulfillment in an affair with her husband's gamekeeper, Oliver Mellors. The book's themes are of adultery and sex and explicit language, and it actually caused it to be banned in several countries upon its initial publication in 1928. In 1959, a French film of this novel was banned in New York on grounds that it promoted adultery, but the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that prohibiting its showing was a violation of the First Amendment. And this is probably why they're still passing this book around secretly, because,
Yeah.
in the chronicle of time, this has just happened.
Right, and it probably would have been famous, yeah, because this is 1960.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's why they were like, don't read this on the train, because, like, if anyone sees the title of the book, they'll know exactly what you're reading, and it's going to get the wrong. Yeah, so there you go. You mentioned one of the ladies here is the switchboard lady, who is Flo from the Progressive commercials.
Yes, it's my favorite cameo. I know it's not a cameo, but like to me, it's a cameo.
I think this is, before she was Flo.
Yeah.
Peggy asks to borrow the book, and Joan tries to keep her from reading it.
Yeah, Joan's like, no, don't.
And one of the secretaries mentions that Joan's pocketbook is too big, and she replies but she has a change of clothes and a toothbrush in it. So we're getting a little insight into maybe Joan's personal life also. Which is funny because she's so straight-laced at work. So scene 6, the scene changes to the conference room where there's a meeting with Mencken's department store. If you remember, after the disaster of a first meeting, Rachel Mencken agreed to give the agency another chance after Don charmed her over drinks in episode 1. There are Bloody Marys and lox canapes at the table. Oh, so yeah, maybe good point. Maybe they are learning they didn't serve shrimp this time, but it's still a breakfast meeting. And still Bloody Marys. I wish I wish we still had meetings like that. I love Bloody Marys. So before Rachel enters the scene, Harry is telling a really ridiculous misogynistic joke that I didn't even write down, but it's like... But then, so all the men are laughing about women when Pete walks Rachel into the room. So part of his job being in accounts is walking the clients through the office and into these meetings to try to, like, warm them up before they hear the pitch. Like, his whole job is to make the client feel so relaxed and happy and ready to say yes to anything that they pitch.
Which is funny, because I don't think Pete would be doing that.
Yeah.
Well.
For some reason, they decided he's good at that. And he is. It's just it's interesting to me that that's a job at all, and then also interesting that Pete's that guy.
I don't know. I loved doing that part of my job when I worked in an office. Like, talking to the client was like my favorite part of the day.
Aww.
Like, making sure that the client was happy with our product, and like, I don't know. If I had a chance to like correct something to make the client like view of our work or our company better, I like that.
That's great. Yeah, I think that some people are just suited to customer service like that, and some of us just want to work and be left alone and not schmooze. But anyway, Rachel is wearing a really fabulous pink suit with a matching hat with a feather on it, and she looks fantastic. So basically this meeting starts, and an executive from the research department, who we have not met before, and they say his name, but I didn't write it down, and he has a British accent. He explains what they learned by researching all of Mencken's competitors. Their primary focus was on Saks, Fifth Avenue. Don loses his cufflink again, and this time it falls next to Rachel, and he doesn't notice, but she does, and she flicks it back at him, you say very flirtatiously.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're exchanging looks like throughout the scene, and Pete notices at some point.
Yes.
So the research guy is saying that their competitors are focusing on less is more in their advertising and window displays, blah, 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 goes on and on for a while, and then Rachel points out, and yet my store already has a personal shopping service and designer collections, which makes me wonder if you've been so focused on my competitors that you failed to visit my store.
Mm-hmm. Go you, Rachel.
Yep. She's really good. She's not letting anyone walk all over her. So Pete, Ken, and Harry lie immediately. They're just like suddenly making excuses. But Dawn owns up to the fact that none of them have ever been to the store, but promises to personally correct that wrong today. And then, so Dawn walks her out instead of Pete this time. Rachel says something about how Dawn handled the lie well. She says something about no one likes being caught in a lie, and he says that wasn't a lie, that was ineptitude without sufficient cover.
Which I love.
Yeah, it was good.
And then the best part of the scene, which is they're talking like at the glass doors before you get to the elevator vestibule, and they're just talking, and then like it kind of gets quiet, and then a chicken walks by. And Don says something, I don't remember.
Yeah, he says like, that was a junior account man or
yeah. And then she like kind of smiles like, oh, okay, that explains why there's a chicken in your office. We cut to Harry and Pete walking from the meeting to Pete's office. Here we learned that Pete definitely picked up on the flirting. So Harry's trying to quit smoking by using a lollipop. He's trying to explain how to, quote, enjoy the company of women in the limited way a married man can. And he's like, I've been married for 2 years. Pete asks if that means having something on the side and mentions how that's something Draper must have. He says that no one knows anything about that guy. Remember, he doesn't like to talk about his past. Then Pete's wife calls and asks him what he wants for dinner, and he says ribeye in the pan with butter. And he seems happy I hope it. Oh well, you said I hope it lasts.
I think he looks genuinely happy when she calls and he's like, because he puts the phone down. He's like, "There's gonna be dinner waiting for me when I get home." Like he's so excited to be married. I'm happy for him in this moment. Then cut to the camera looking through Mencken's department store glass as Dawn enters. Rachel has changed outfits into a much more subdued suit with no fancy hat. Dawn notices that she changed her outfit. Anyway.
The store floor is fancy, or the lobby really, because this is just an entry. The building must have been meant to be a grand company's headquarters. She says the original tenants laid the last brick before the crash, so assuming this is a 1920s stock market crash that led to the Great Depression. The great marble floor lobby with very decorative insets and over the transept at the door, and there's this green marble surrounding the elevators. And we get some history of Mencken's having started on 7th Avenue as a hosiery, which I was like, nylon, but no, that's way too early because they started, she says something about 30 years ago.
Yeah, so no.
So that would be before nylon.
So it would have been silk stockings, which are spensier.
Rachel's father and uncle bought this place of the original owners, the ones who were likely facing those financial troubles due to the crash, she says for a shekel, which is actually the Israeli currency, and today equals about 29 cents in US dollar currency. So let's say they got this for a quarter of its worth, which is a bargain and a half.
And it's a beautiful building too.
Yeah. Rachel shows him around and then gets him some really ugly cufflinks.
So I mentioned that they're ugly cufflinks. What do you think as a man? Are they hideous or is that just me?
I would never wear those cufflinks.
So yeah, Don either likes them or is being gracious about them.
I will say, I'm all for silver. I don't like gold accessories. I feel like silver works better for me. But, and I have a couple of shirts that have cufflink cuffs. And the cufflinks that I have that I use the most were my grandpa's. And they are actually gold. And they are little Ford Model Ts.
Well, it's sweet, the moment anyway, even if they are like enormous night helmets, and I just think they look really gaudy. But anyway, so then they go up to the bedding department on the second floor.
Yeah, and there's a funny moment where Rachel's like, I like how quiet it is. And Don says something about lack of customers, but more importantly, in the background, there's a saleswoman asleep on the chair. Like, obviously completely out with her head turned over her shoulder and like her hosiery's showing because her, like when she sat down, like her skirt went up. And when they leave, she like wakes up and like wipes drool off her face.
And they just like have this whole conversation like while this like woman's asleep on a chair.
She's like asleep in the background.
Then Rachel says something about showing him her favorite part of the store, but then the scene changes, so we don't get to see where that is yet.
Yes. And where does it change to?
Now we're back at Sterling Cooper. Cut 2. Pete leaving his office, and a group of office worker nobodies, just extras, are discussing old fashions. Everyone's standing up and ready to leave as if they all leave at the same time.
Yeah, okay, that felt so fake. Like, I did not like that. It felt like the director said, okay, everyone, the office day is ending, so pretend you're leaving. That's not how people leave offices. People don't leave an office by everybody, it's 5:05. We all gotta get out. Let's everybody pick up your stuff at once and go. No. That's not how it happens in real life. Like, it really bugged me. I don't know why. There's no bell. It's not a school.
I think you might just be triggered because it's just your summer vacation for you now, and like anything that reminds you of school is like freaking you out. But maybe. Yeah, that's a good point. Like maybe the like main secretaries in the pool in the middle probably all leave around the same time, but you know the secretaries outside of people's offices aren't leaving until their person
leaves.
Yeah. Anyway, so Pete is heading home and he turns down an invitation to go out for drinks after work, and as he walks by Peggy, he says she looks nice. And she looks grumpy, and I don't blame her because these are some mixed signals he's giving. And I'm thinking that this is Pete taking Harry's advice on how to enjoy the company of women as a married man. Just like, Harry basically told him, like, we do subtle flirting things because it's all we can do now. Like, and I think this is Pete taking his advice, which is annoying, especially because he was, like, so good, like, an hour ago. Like, he was not making dirty jokes about his wife, and he was, like, telling Peggy, we're not gonna, like, this never happened, and now all of a sudden he's flirting because Harry said it's okay to flirt, and it's just like, I hate this guy. Anyway. So we cut to now Don and Rachel walking on the roof of Mencken's department store, and it's nighttime, or at least it's dark out. So this is Rachel's favorite part of the store, where the guard dogs are kept in cages on the roof, because where else do you keep dogs in 1950s Manhattan? I hope they have a rain shelter. It looks like open cages, but hopefully they have something to run under when it rains.
I don't know if they had any space to run under. I think they were literally like, they're like, okay, your shift's over in the cage. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, but like, what if it rains during the like? Apparently, they let him into the. Basically, they live on the roof during the day while the store's open, and then at night they let him in and they just run around the store, which is pretty cool,
Yeah.
actually. But anyway, so these are the guard dogs. Their names are Carla and Leona, not the originals, the third generation, and what every generation of Mencken dogs will be named until the end of time. Apparently, she made it added to the store's bylaws when she was a kid, which is really cute.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel spends a lot of time talking about her childhood growing up in the store and how great a dog is for a lonely little girl. She reveals like a lot of personal stuff, so she's talking about how her mother died in childbirth and that she has an older sister that she didn't get along with. Don looks uncomfortable hearing all of this.
Yeah, he's just sitting like, why are you telling me this? Like, I don't want to talk about backgrounds.
She is being like really forward and like flirty and like open, and Don is not forward. He's a little flirty, but he's certainly not open, so I think it's just like a very different kind of personality he wasn't expecting. But whatever, it works, and they kiss, and it's a really good kiss. But then Don tells her that he's married and that this was a mistake.
Yeah, he's the one who initiated the kiss.
Yeah. But we know that hasn't stopped him before, so like, I don't know, maybe this is a play. But anyway.
Maybe.
So Rachel says, I guess I didn't ask because I didn't want to know. Basically, yeah, she's like, well, she decides she'll keep the account with Sterling Cooper, but she wants someone else working on it. And she asks him if he goes around kissing women he isn't married to all the time, and he says, of course not. Which is a lie. Because he at least has a girlfriend on the side, like we've seen her a lot. But anyway, she storms off, and good for her.
And then we get a hard cut to the train back to Ossining, where Don is wearing a trench coat and a great hat. And I think we should bring this look back. He takes his hat off and throws it on the luggage rack above the seats. Like I don't care about you, hat. And then he like sits down and he's all troubled. And apparently he dropped his paper and it's returned to him by the ticket taker. And he's a little thrown and lost in thoughts. So the ticket taker takes his ticket and Don lights up a cigarette. And that's it for the scene.
Abrupt cut and change to the Draper house. The next morning, Sally Draper wakes Don up all excited, like jumps on him on the bed, all excited about her birthday party. Betty, looking gorgeous in her pin curls and that frilly house coat you hated in episode 1 or 2 or whatever. I think she looks like an angel, just like in front of the window. She's like opening the curtains and letting the sun in her pin curls and her robe. And anyway, so Betty reminds Don that the party is at 2 and that he needs to build the PLAYHOUSE. And then Don goes, a pony? How am I going to build a pony? And Sally's all excited, but Betty's annoyed because now she thinks Sally is going to expect a pony.
But also, Sally is old enough to understand how to spell words.
Anyway, so Betty, while gorgeous, also tells Don that there's breakfast waiting for him downstairs. Clearly, Betty is perfect, but Don looks over at his Rachel Mencken cufflinks instead before the scene changes.
And his breakfast is bacon and egg sandwich, which Betty says is on the range. Like as if like she woke up early and like took care of everything and didn't forget to take care of her husband. And like, I don't care if he's asleep, I'll make him his breakfast anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he can make his own breakfast when he wakes up.
She's perfect. That's important.
Betty, no, Don, you don't deserve Betty. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so he's on the correct side of the bed, the one with the radio clock. And these his cufflinks.
And it's almost like they're a reminder of him cheating on his wife. I wonder if like what Rachel said is bugging him or starting to make him like rethink his life choices. That's what my interpretation of this was.
He's certainly looking at the cufflinks and thinking about Rachel.
I don't know if he's
regret?
going to like...
Is it longing? Is it confusion? Is it like deep contemplative thought? It's something.
Yeah, I don't know. I doubt that his lifestyle's going to change, but maybe this is like starting to like put the seed of like maybe the way I'm living life is not quite right. I don't know. That's my hope.
That is a fine interpretation. I think at this point it's definitely too early to tell what he thinks at any point, honestly. So then we cut to Don day drinking and building a playhouse.
Yes, and it's really weird to see Don not in his suit. Like the only times we have seen him without his suit on is when he's naked after having, been with his
Yeah, we've
wife
seen him
or
in
girlfriend.
boxers and we've seen him in a suit.
Yeah. But he's wearing like beige on beige on beige, as to say this is what people who work with their hands wear.
It's just like a t-shirt and work.
He's wearing a white t-shirt, but like a beige button down and beige pants. Literally, it's like I don't know what people that don't wear suits every day wear, but this is probably what they wear. That's what I think he was going for.
He keeps walking back and forth to the beer fridge that they have in the garage.
Yes, which is really cool. Okay, so this is a servo refrigerator. It is a company that manufactured refrigerators between 1933 and 1957 and actually used gas as their power source, which is different from other manufacturers who had by that time started using chlorofluorocarbons or CFS. They were popular but associated with safety concerns because they could potentially leak carbon monoxide, which is deadly. This particular unit that they have in the garage is looks like the Model S600, which is pretty cool. Has a compressor at the bottom, so the door is about 3/4 of the height, with 2 drawers and shelves, and even an ice box on the top, which is accessible like most mid-century fridges. Once you open the fridge, you have the icebox door inside.
This actually tracks, like if they were only making them through 1957, maybe they didn't start off with a fridge in the garage like this was their old fridge that they moved into the
Yeah,
garage when they got a new fridge. Which is how everyone ends up with a fridge in the garage. I think it's always the old fridge is in the garage and now it becomes the beer fridge.
I know. I'm excited to get a new fridge for the kitchen so I can put that one in the garage. Although there's no space in the garage, let's face it. If I had to get a new fridge, that one's going somewhere
Oh.
else.
Oh, also, what's interesting about the beer is that these cans do not have flip tabs. So there's actually a can opener hanging by the fridge from a string so that he can poke holes in the side of the top to drink from,
Mm-hmm.
which is something I never thought about. But of course, that like cans would have just been cans
Yeah.
until they figured out how to make them easier to drink out of. But I thought that was an interesting touch.
So he's drinking Fielding beer. Now, Fielding beer is a fake brand of beer that was featured in this episode and also in the Friends episode, the one with the poker.
That's so funny. So it's just like I bet because this came out after Friends, they decided to use that fake beer brand like on purpose because it's just like a TV show fake beer, like Let's chips. Anyway, so the kids come running out and they see the playhouse. Don's having a hell of a time putting this thing together, so he asks the kids to run to the garage and get him another beer.
So we're at least on 2, but I think 3 beers by now.
Mm-hmm.
Assuming that he didn't have any beer before the camera found him. Which...
Scene change again to Betty and Francine in the kitchen working on appetizers. They both have their hair in their curlers still. They're putting some sort of seasoned cream cheese in celery sticks. Francine is super pregnant, but smoking. So they're gossiping, as usual, about Helen Bishop, the divorcee, again. Betty invited her to the party because she saw Betty buying balloons and it was only right to invite her.
Yeah, there's a comment here from Francine. She's like appalled that Helen's walking up Tree Ridge Lane. Like she goes, where the hell is she walking to? There's a lot of like her walking places.
And like all the women are scandalized, like, why is she walking?
Yeah, who walks?
But then they turn to look at Dawn through the window, being all manly in the backyard, and they both swoon. Scene change to the bathroom. Everything is pink, even the wallpaper, which is thin vertical stripes. And there's a lot of there's a lot of
There's a lot of knickknacks on glass shelves, and I'm not a fan. Like, like I don't like knickknacks. Period. Like I don't like if I don't like them. Just I don't like them. But in the bathroom, like bathrooms are dirty. Like even if they're clean, like things splash.
This reeks of guest bathroom. Like this is the fancy bathroom that the guests use when they have company over.
100%, because later on she's like, "Did you use a powder room?"
So the playhouse is done, but Don's probably drunk. He uses the restroom, but he can't use any of the decorative soap or the towels, so he dries his hand on his shirt. Betty tells Don to go up and shower before the guest arrives, and Francine says, "Want company?" And they all laugh. So yeah, this is what I mean. Like, this is 2 scenes now where we see women, like, treating men as objects, which is a nice change after the, like, earful we got in the last episode, like, honestly. Gonzalo noted that we get a really good view of their kitchen in this scene, with a General Electric fridge, complete with the most mid-century vegetable magnets in the world. I love her kitchen. I actually really do. The only thing I don't like about it is the, like, colonial scroll work on the cabinets.
Mm,
I really don't even mind the color of the cabinets. I just kind of wish they were like flat fronts.
yeah. Just those vegetable, you know what a vegetable magnets I'm talking about. Out there, people listening,
Oh, yeah.
if you were around in the mid-century or you have grandparents or parents who were around the mid-century, you have these magnets.
So cut to black, and then to the next scene.
Yeah, I think it's the first time this happens. Like the cut to black, then instead of like a hard cut.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it opens with a view of the Draper's house from the front.
Which is like a gray planks with like a white trim and red door, which is literally what I want my house to look like. Like before we've been watching this show, I've always liked gray planks with white trim.
And a red door.
Yes, and they have these like two hedges with paved brick, like walkway leading to the door, and the camera is low because of course it is, and we see it from as if across the street with a view of the back of a car, which I tried so hard to see what that car was. It looked like it says Baker on it. There's no, to my knowledge, I couldn't find any cars that had any like Baker or Saker or Laker. Like I looked at that kind of stuff. Baker Motor Vehicles was a thing though in the early 1900s, which was an electric car company, but they didn't really make it into the mid 20th. So I don't know. Anyways, it's Sally's birthday party.
Betty makes a picture of mint juleps and passes them out to the adults while she explains the menus. Francine takes a cocktail despite being super pregnant. So the menu is date nut bread, cold turkey, and Waldorf salad for the adults, and peanut butter sandwiches for the kids. The kids run through the scene. One is wearing leg braces and crutches.
Yeah, and it's a nice touch to see this because I think this is calling, and of course I haven't seen the rest of the episode yet, so we talk about this in a little bit as well. But it's kind of like touching on the history of polio. You know how some kids were affected and were recovering from post polio because the polio vaccine hadn't come out. Well, had recently come out. It didn't really treat polio, but could prevent it from occurring or reduce the severity of the illness if it did occur. The vaccine became licensed on April 12th, 1955 by Jonas Salk, and it helped prevent all three types of polio. Type 1 still exists today in 2025, but type 2 was eradicated in 1999 and type 3 in 2020.
All the adults are talking. One of the husbands makes a mean joke about the wives in front of all their wives, and the men laugh and the women look sad. His wife actually tries to stop him from telling that joke, and he's like, no, I'm going to tell the joke. And basically, all the adults are chit-chatting and drinking, and Carlton, Francine's husband, walks over to Dawn, and he's like, well, we got it all, huh? And Dawn's like, yep, this is it. These men do not seem happy, despite how beautiful their lives are and how Betty is the perfect hostess and all their wives are gorgeous and wearing these beautiful dresses and their kids are playing in this house and their lives are truly blessed. And everyone's unhappy.
So looks can be deceptive.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the theme here. But they cut to the chicken. Not the chicken.
No.
But they cut to the kitchen, complete with hanging wall rotary phone. And my house still has that outlet. I mean, I don't have the phone, and the outlet doesn't work, but it has the outlet on the wall.
Good.
And the ladies are talking about one of the kids who's got polio. This is where we discovered that I am Nostradamus, and I foresaw this in that little detail in the previous scene.
And then the scene changes again, and we finally meet Helen Bishop. The bell rings. Betty goes to answer it, and in walks the divorcee that everyone's been gossiping about. And she's wearing one of my favorite casual outfits of the entire series. Actually, literally, the women don't wear pants a lot in this show, so when they do, it really stands out. And this outfit in particular is one of my faves. So she's wearing red pants, a cream blouse, button-down blouse with red and olive vertical stripes, and she has the collar slightly popped, and then a mohair sweater draped over her shoulders. I think she looks fabulous. I really love this outfit. Anyway, so she brought her son Glenn, who's about Sally's age, and then Betty pulls Don aside and reminds him that he has to go pick up the cake.
Yeah, well, she just literally said, she walks in the room, she goes, Don, go get the cake. Also, here's Helen.
Mm-hmm. But she also convinces him, even though that he needs to go pick up the cake, to go get the video camera out, because they bought it and they never use it. So which is it, Betty? The cake or the video camera? But anyway, it ends up being the video camera.
Should have been the cake.
Should have been the cake. But anyway, men are making jokes in the other room while Betty introduces Helen to the ladies in the kitchen. So we're in the room with the men looking into the kitchen with them while they're joking about how those hens are going to peck her to death. So cut to the kitchen where the ladies are talking. They're discussing their honeymoons, actually.
Well, no, they're discussing the Easter break first, and then they're like,
oh,
one goes, I went there on honeymoon, and they're like, oh, well, blah, blah, this is what I did
and
for
then
my
they
honeymoon.
start talking about honeymoons. Okay, yeah. Good catch. So they're talking about going down to Boca Raton, which is in Florida, and a lot of retirees live there. And Francine makes some anti-Semitic remarks about Florida, having gone there on honeymoon with Carlton. Basically, she says that she felt outnumbered, which is interesting. Like, every now and then you get comfortable in the show and, like, you feel like everything is relatable, and then they say something, like, totally out of place like this, and then you remember it's the 60s.
Yep.
That's how I feel watching the show a lot. I'm always, like, shocked. Like, I was like, oh, right, it's the 60s. Then the ladies start discussing their honeymoons. And then they finally just ask Helen why she goes on walks. Because it's just like bothering everybody.
Yeah. She claims it's to clear her mind and that Einstein used to do it. And this is well documented from his time at Princeton University when it was a part of his daily routine. He actually valued the quote mental clarity and problem solving inspiration, quote, end quote, that he gained. Also, Einstein just recently passed away a few years ago in 1955.
Oh,
according,
interesting.
in the timeline of the show. So it's more relevant to say that than it would be today. The ladies still don't understand why it's odd, even though a 1960 survey by the ORRRC, which is the Ohio River Road Runners Club, hello again, Ohio, you keep popping up everywhere mid-century. This survey indicated that 90% of all Americans did some sort of outdoor recreation and walking was very popular. Actually, walking for pleasure ranked second in popularity. So, what do they not get? Is it because she was alone instead of with the kids and husband?
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, maybe. I think it's just, maybe it's all being channeled into the walking, but like they're just so confused that she's single and like living her life.
Yeah.
Like they're just like so confused. But anyway, so now we're back. Don's taking a video of the party because Betty told him to.
Yes, and he's using an 8mm camera. And this is one of those. Well, this is one of like a couple of parts in this episode which like I was very proud of my researching skills because I tried zooming in looking for logos, couldn't find one, and I did a lot of like research, and I think I found it. It looks a lot like the Keystone 8mm Capri K27 with triple turret lenses. And this camera, well, Keystone cameras itself, they manufactured cameras beginning in 1919 in Boston, and by the 1930s were producing low-cost 16mm cameras that are still in use today. And they labeled their equipment made in the USA as an important part of their appeal, but sadly filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 1991.
Oh.
However, the Capri K27 was a popular model with 3 lenses and 9 settings for cloudy to sunny conditions. It was light, it was easy to use, it's considered a rare collectible today. And I found one on eBay for $32.99. And I want it.
You should buy it. That's cheap.
It looks really cool.
It looks really cool. So he's taken some video of the kids running around the living room, shots of the men who raise their glasses when the camera's on them. Carlton follows Helen to the foyer and basically asks to step in and be the man of the house for her, like in a like kind of flirty way. But then she calls him on his like immediately. Sorry, you're gonna have to beep that out.
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah, like immediately she turns around like, oh, like, and just like gives him some sass back, and he's like shocked that she like, I guess, understood the innuendo and threw it back in his face as like being totally ridiculous, and then he gets embarrassed, and good for her.
Yeah.
Don, still shooting video, gets some video of a couple kissing. This married couple might actually be happy, and Don is having feelings, but we can't tell what they are.
Yeah, and the opera music in the background doesn't help. I think what Rachel said to him, the rooftop is staying home. And one thing I did not research, there's a lot of opera in the background music in several scenes, and I don't know. I should have researched if that's from Marriage of Figaro.
Oh, good point. I wonder if it is. It probably is.
Probably. But we cut to the outside. Dawn is still drinking. It's a marathon today. The kids are playing in Sally's playhouse, and they're saying things that they clearly picked up from their parents, like, I like sleeping on the couch, and I don't like your tone. And Helen comes out to talk to Dawn and says, interesting crowd in there. And Dawn replies with, same crowd out here.
Yeah, because the kids are saying like the same things that the adults. Yeah, it's a moment. So now we're back to the kitchen, and the ladies are gossiping behind Helen's back. Oh, there's your coffee.
Yes. Okay. So this is really cool. I was so proud of this part of me researching and watching this episode because Betty's making coffee in this really nice urn, and she's using chock full of nuts coffee. Okay. Now, couple of things. This is really cool, and I'm always under the belief in TV shows that nothing's accidental. Like there's a reason why she's making coffee, and it's probably to show this can and this can specific. And you can't see the name. You kind of have to like know what the can is. So it took a lot of researching to try to figure out. Because I was like, I kept going like, pause play, hoping to get like a shot of the can. I couldn't, so I had to research it. Anyway, I finally found it, and I found the actual can. And it's interesting because Chock full of nuts was actually a New York City nut roasting shop that was opened by William Black on 43rd and Broadway in 1926. Now, keep William Black in mind. The name's important. He actually opened a storefront in the early 1930s, which was bad timing because of the Great Depression, during which roasted nuts was seen as a luxury because people's discretionary food spending was non-existent, right? Because we're Great Depression, which is, if you keeping track, second time we hit Great Depression in this episode. Black switched to coffee because it was an everyday staple food that consumers were still spending money on.
That's smart.
The shop signaled the birth of roasting coffee shops in New York City and actually became a symbol of the city's Jewish connection because Black's original name was William Schwartz, which is the Yiddish word for black, because he was a Lithuanian Jewish immigrant. So everything's connected.
Everything's connected. Wow. Chock full of nuts coffee.
Yes.
Good research, man. Yeah, it must have taken forever.
Happy to do it.
All right, so Betty, while making coffee, is being super nice, like basically defending Helen, sort of, and like trying to. She's not joining in on the jokes that all the other women.
Yeah, she's trying to like divert.
Yeah, and then Glenn comes in looking for his mom, and she's like, "Oh, I think she's in the living room." And then one of the ladies gets Betty's attention because they all notice that Helen is outside talking to Don, and Betty runs out immediately to remind Don that he needs to go get the cake.
Which, like, who doesn't go get the cake before the party?
Yeah,
like,
no,
I don't understand. Like,
they should have gotten the cake yesterday, and it should have already been in the fridge.
Like, the host in me is like hyperventilating because they're not ready for the party.
Yeah, I know, and
the party's
I
been going on
understand
for an
completely why she brought it up 5 times, because like I'd be freaking out also. But also the fact that she immediately runs out to tell him about the cake, like lucky she had that excuse, but she'd been acting like she wasn't worried, but then as soon as they point out that Helen's talking to Don, she like runs outside. So maybe she is a little worried.
Maybe.
Anyway, so Ernie, Carlton and Francine's son, knocks over a drink, and another dad hits him immediately and tells him not to run in the house. Carlton doesn't say anything to the man, but just finishes explaining the lesson to his kid, like in a stern but softer than that guy's tone. Like a better kind of parenting, just saying like, don't run in the house, like in a like totally normal parenting way.
Yeah, like a parent.
But he doesn't say anything to the other guy for like hitting his kid. And then he just ends the lesson with, go get your mother in here to clean this up.
Yeah. I feel like today he was something to the other dad.
I also think it's funny that, like, he has to go to a completely other room to get his mom to come in and clean the mess that's in the room that these 2 men are in, and they just can't pick up a napkin.
Yeah, that's also true.
Just a lot of layers.
Yep.
Scene 24. Don driving back to the house with the cake next to him, but instead of pulling into the house, he just keeps driving.
Yes, but okay, this is a weird scene. He slows down, and he's like in a very moody thinking mentality. So he slows down in front of the house, and actually, he's driving a 1960 Buick Electra 225, which is a classic American luxury car. It actually is a full-size vehicle that was produced from 1959 to 1990, replacing the Roadmaster line of cars, and served as the Buick flagship sedan through its entire production. It actually came in a 2-door sedan, 2-door convertible, which is what Don has, a 4-door sedan, and a 5-door station wagon. The name Electra 225 was a nod to its length of more than 225 inches, which today, for reference, a full-size sedan ranges from 186 to 200 inches in length, meaning that this car would have been a full 2 feet longer than the longest standard size car today in 2025.
So I guess they have 2 cars, like Dawn has this car and then Betty has her station wagon.
Correct. But if you remember from the first episode, Dawn was driving a 1959 Oldsmobile Rocket 88.
Oh.
Which is more of an entry-level executive car, and the Buick is more of like a luxury-level car. So maybe this is pointing towards a more established management car, or most likely what happened, the show art department didn't think that 20 years later a podcaster would notice. Either way, it's a pretty car. And also, when he slows down, you see the camera on his side, like in the car, pointing out the passenger side, and you see the front of the house and a blue car that's parked in front of it. As in, he's in the middle of the street, very obviously next to the blue car. But the next camera angle, when he starts speeding up and leaves, the camera points him from behind, and he's several feet behind the blue car, like almost a full 225 inches behind the car.
So just a little continuity error.
Yeah, a little continuity error. He stops at the stop sign and then turns right without using the indicators.
Scene 25, where's the cake? So the scene changes to the camera looking at the clock. It is 4:25 p.m. The party started at 2, for those keeping track. The kids are all crowded around the table, and Betty is looking at the clock, and it's clearly time for cake, and there is no sign of Dawn. She calls the shop to confirm that the cake was picked up almost an hour ago. And Gonzalo noticed, and yeah, this is something everybody does, and I just don't even think about it anymore, but she had to take her earring off to use the phone, and then puts it back
Yeah.
on. Because everyone had these, like, really big earrings, and they were all clip-ons, so they can just take them off and put them back on. Joan does that
Yeah.
all the time.
I remember my mom doing that.
Also, all the ladies are smoking in the kitchen, even pregnant Francine.
Mm-hmm.
People are starting to leave, and another husband makes a joke about how it's obvious that Dawn's not coming back, but everyone's just kind of looking stressed. But Helen saves the day because she thinks she has a Sara Lee in her freezer.
Yeah, and this is gonna have to be an episode. I'm not gonna say much more than the name. Sara Lee is the name of the first cream cheesecake that was produced by the company in 1949, before the company changed its name to the Kitchens of Sara Lee. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that'll be a fun episode. So the cake is served, and Carlton sings "For She's a Jolly Good Fellow," and when Betty goes to cut the cake, it's still frozen.
Yeah, I can't imagine the kids having fun.
Yeah, it's a little
with that.
sad. And after this, like, everything she did to make this party perfect,
Yeah.
and now she's like the saddest frozen cheesecake.
Yes, and as she is looking like sad and the camera's looking at her, we finally get a fade transition in this episode. I was wrong thinking that they were only going to use haircuts. We actually see Don waking up from a long overdue nap in his car. He's parked under a bridge and it's dark out, and the first thing he does is light up a cigarette because mid-century. He looks troubled and he's facing the train tracks, and the lights turn on and a train drives by. We're looking at Don's face, lost in really deep thought, as we see the reflection of the train in the windshield. And I wrote down in the outline, maybe he's constipated because he hasn't used the laxative they were trying to figure out a pitch for earlier in the episode.
I'm just glad he finally fell asleep because he's been drinking since breakfast. Like he's been all day. So I'm glad he got his nap, but I'm sad that the cake never made it home. But so there's a lot of thoughts about this, where he's parked specifically. I think he genuinely just needed a nap, and that's a good place to park the car. Some people are like, was he going to drive onto the tracks and then fell asleep first? Like, is he that? I wasn't getting those vibes. I think he's just like thinking and driving and being self-absorbed and then stopped for a nap. I don't think it's any more complicated than that, but perhaps the train tracks have some sort of like metaphorical meaning, but I don't think he was doing anything like, I don't think this was like a suicidal moment. I think he was just,
I don't think so either.
Just being self-absorbed and drunk and sleepy. But anyway, scene change to the kitchen, once again featuring the General Electric fridge with the magnets.
Yes, and Betty's cleaning up, wearing yellow gloves at the sink, obviously doing dishes, but she's smoking a cigarette, which I would guess gets messy because her hands are supposed to be wet from the sink. Except that her gloves are drier than matzo crackers, which is another Jewish thing.
I always think it's gross when she smokes a cigarette with her dishwashing glove hand. Like, she holds the cigarette with her dishwashing gloves. The reason why you wear gloves, well, I guess it's to protect your nail polish, but it's also because you don't want to get your hands in all the, like, food gross. And then, like, to pick up a cigarette with it just really grosses me out. But she doesn't seem that worried.
She does struggle to get her gloves off, though, which, if you remember from the last episode, happens when she gets in her head about Don doing something that's not, like, husbandly.
Mm-hmm. Good catch. And Don finally comes home with a dog.
Yeah, a golden retriever who's obviously a full-grown dog and not a puppy.
Sally is thrilled, and so is Bobby. Remember, they have another child that we did not mention at all.
But he's been wearing this great cowboy outfit the entire episode, which is like very mid-century.
Yeah, he has been. So Sally names the dog Polly. Betty is super pissed. Don kisses Sally and wishes her happy birthday, and it's really sweet, actually. And clearly this gift was Rachel Menken inspired, because she gave him that whole speech about how a lonely little girl, a dog is all you need. So now his little girl has a dog.
And then we cut to black, and the episode ends with Bobby Vinton's P.S. I Love You playing.
And that was episode 3. What'd you think?
So many thoughts. Okay, I'm loving the like intricacity. I'm loving all the details that they put in the show. Like I said earlier, I don't think anything in TV is accidental, except for when they do mess up and like accidentally leave a water bottle on the mantelpiece. Hello, Downton Abbey. But like, I love all the little details, and I feel like they're all connected. I mean, obviously, like, the episode starts with something that is like World War II related, which is like has to impact because of the like the whole like Holocaust thing. And then we talk about the mannequins who are Jewish, and then there's even a callback to it in the coffee that they use. Like, everything in their life is Jewish or Jewish inspired or Jewish related, but the people that are living these lives are so anti-Semitic. Like, think about what Francine says about going down to Boca Raton. So like, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think there's something there, and I'm not sure quite what it is. Like, people are like, I don't know how to put it in words.
It is an interesting takeaway. And our like up and coming love interest, or maybe already love interest, Rachel, is also Jewish. So it could be, maybe that all these things are coming up because she's becoming important, and now like all these things are around. Like, they were probably all put in the scene directly to like make it a top of mind for everybody. But yeah, it's a very good point.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite character in this episode?
I don't know. Okay, I'm kind of on the Carlton bus because I like the way that he dealt with his kid after the glass knocking incident. And while he doesn't say anything to the dad, he does give him a look, which is like, hello, that's my son. Step away.
Yeah, that's true. He does.
But so I'm gonna say him because I don't think I have any other favorite. I feel bad for Helen because like everybody's gossiping about her, but also, what is she doing when she walks?
My favorite character this episode is Helen Bishop because of how she handles everything really well. Even though I'm sure she knows that she was like not super welcome at that party, she still shows up and is strong and tries to have a good time and saves the day with her Sarah Lee and wears that fabulous outfit. So she's my favorite this episode.
Well, it looks like with that, we've landed the plane today. Thank you all for listening today. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the show and tell a friend.
You can also follow us on YouTube and Instagram at MCL Podcast. Instagram is the best place to send us feedback and episode suggestions. Send us a DM anytime. And you can also contact us through the Send Us a Text Message feature in the show notes.
Yeah, so send us some fan mail. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Bye!
Thank you for listening to Mid-Century Living. Please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave a review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram at MCL Podcast. See you next Friday.